Welcome to session 167 of I Need Living Conversations. I'm Julian Catari and I'm with Blue Heron Woman, and we have the third part of In the Absence of the Sacred series, which speak of we go thoroughly into all these different aspects of a system that has taken the sacred away from our lives and that we really need to delve into, because if we don't know what we're into, if we don't know what we're living, then we just can be apathetic about it. We were talking about how much apathy there is, and so we shouldn't be apathetic, and one way to not be is to get informed about what we are participating in. So welcome everyone to this series on the absence of the sacred, which is a tough to hear kind of part of the show, but I guess it's might be also more entertaining, or more, conflict is all sometimes fun, at least as
Yeah.
an entertainment sense.
Yeah.
So maybe it
Well,
will
it,
be entertaining.
well, I think at the least it kind of makes you think.
Right, that's it. Yeah.
So we stopped last week with how do we counterbalance the appeal of the machine by
Mhm.
practicing skepticism, which is one of the 5 agreements from the Toltecs.
Right.
They practice be skeptical. So
Mhm.
the problem is not with technology itself, but how we use it and who controls it.
Hmm.
This is the comment we hear most often, right?
What who it serves, right?
Yeah. Well, in believing this idea, we actually allow technology to develop without without analyzing its actual bias. And then we're surprised when certain technologies turn out to be more useful or beneficial for only certain segments of society. A prime example is nuclear energy, which cannot move society in a democratic direction. Rather, it moves society in an autocratic direction. Because it is so expensive and so dangerous, nuclear energy must be under the direct control of centralized financial, governmental, and military institutions. A nuclear power plant is something that neighbors cannot get together and build for their community, right? So the
Mhm.
existence of nuclear energy and nuclear weaponry requires the existence of a new priesthood, a technological and militarily elite capable of guarding nuclear waste products for approximately 250,000 years while they remain dangerous.
Yeah, and I really like how it touches on the priesthood. I like that word priesthood,
Yeah,
because we've made it that big. It's like an unchallenged belief
yeah,
that we just
absolutely.
follow, right?
So we have to understand that every new technology steers us in some social and political direction by its very nature. Our current societies are way out of control and desecrating the fabric of life. Stopping the destruction requires not just regulating or eliminating individual items like pesticides or military weapons. It requires new ways of thinking about humanity and new ways of relating to life. And it requires a whole new worldview than what we have right now. The negative view of TV.
Mhm.
Through TV, our minds, or the truth, shall I say, it should be the dark truth, not the negative.
Yeah.
Through TV, our minds have been channeled and simplified to match and our simplified physical environment, to match a channeled and simplified physical environment, like shopping malls, suburbs, freeways, high-rise buildings that character our lives. The process of moving edited images rapidly through a passive human brain is so different from active information gathering, whether it's from books, newspapers, or walks in nature. So as a result, we're more passive, less able to deal with nuance and complexity, less able to read or create. Television engages us all in similar thought patterns, similar experiences, similar imagery, and a similar context of reality, which is poisonous to a culture of diversity. Television has a critical role to play since it's the instrument that sends out the marching orders. It's the organizing tool for those who control society, the way the head communicates with the body. It's a training instrument for a new consciousness. So woven together, TV, computers, satellites, genetics, and corporations are all part of the monolith of technological society and are beyond what any of them are individually. So it is this creature, the megatech, that we must upend and decide if we're going to tolerate it any longer.
Mm-hmm.
Saying no to technology, any technology, seems beyond us. It seems as though we haven't begun to think that we have the right and ability to turn back a whole technology. In a truly democratic society, any new technology would be subject to exhaustive debate. That a society must retain the option of declining a technology if it seems harmful is just basic human rights. But we've never been given that right.
Yeah.
And we never questioned it. We just accept it, readily
Mm-hmm.
swallow it, readily put the next iWatch on. You know?
Mm-hmm.
As it is now, our spectrum of choice is limited to mere acceptance. The real decisions about technological instruction are made by only one segment of society, and that is the corporate, based strictly on profit. All technology should be assumed guilty until proven innocent. This statement emphasizes examining the hidden negative values of new technologies in our society that is disposed to see only the positive side of the story. It also assumes that a judgment could and should be made in time for a technology to be halted. What if guilty until proven innocent had been society's rule when cars were invented? What if the ordinary person had been told that the car would bring with it a modern concrete city? And we could go on about this. Parking lots, paved over, We have no clue how our ancestors would have answered. The bottom line is that they were not informed of any of the predictions. The people animating a dead corporate entity do not like surprises, so they hire people to understand the product's full spectrum of commercial possibilities and the dire consequences. And they're selective about what is revealed. So, for instance, let's look at the forecast for the telephone. Number one, the telephone will become pervasive. It will be used by all. The telephone service will become a public utility. Telephone conversations will be recorded. They projected this hundreds of years ago already, right? The
There's
telephone will,
nothing new under the sun.
yeah, the telephone will aid industrial and corporate centralization since management added distance will be possible. The telephone will foster the growth of the downtown area, create suburbs, and advance the growth of skyscrapers. Telephone systems will require directories. The telephone will be particularly attractive and valuable to farmers. It will abolish loneliness, particularly for the farmer's wife. Like the farmer's wife has nothing better to do than talk on the telephone. There shows the detachment of someone who hasn't a clue, right?
Yeah.
The telephone will provide security despite isolation. Telephones will speed the conduct of finances. Right? They knew this. They projected this way back when, before computers even, right?
Mm.
The telephone will increase job mobility, will be used for shopping, will speed the movement of perishable goods, will broaden market areas, will reduce travel of salesmen, will be used for advertising. So this is what I'm saying. We humans are so, nowadays are so, I'm sorry, we've lowered the stupid bar so low that we can't even think what our life might look like a year from now. And these corporate entities are planning 100 years in the future, what it will look like. And we don't even want to make a conjecture of what our life could look like a month from now or a year from now, because our stupid bar is so damn low.
Mm.
That's the Ren Water Woman right there. That said that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That's Gushing River.
Oh.
The telephone system will foster national integration, will reduce regional dialect differences, homogenize the language. Whoa. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The telephone will foster growth in the scale of government administration, will centralize the exercise of authority. The telephone system will speed news reporting, will link radio network broadcasting, will allow feedback for radio talk shows. The telephone will be useful for military command and control, encouraging the centralization of command. Telephone crimes will be a problem. Doctors will diagnose and give advice over the telephone. Overhead wires will be an eyesore. The increase of the telephone system will threaten the depletion of trees and copper. The availability of the telephone will reduce the need for travel. The use of women operators will increase economic opportunities for women. Young people will use the telephone more than their elders, and the quality of letter writing will decline. The telephone ring will have an insistent, demanding quality. The telephone will lower the emphasis on writing skills in schools. So they knew 200 years ago that the telephone would lower this stupid bar for us. The telephone will change people's sense of difference, and the telephone will foster impersonality. Would our ancestors, the ordinary people, have said yes to telephones if they knew all this? Probably not. In the various books written about the dark side of technology, we find that we have traded off our health for the economic health of corporations that are paper-only entities. So since we now know that most of what we are told about technology comes from its proponents, we must be here's some attitudes we should choose going forward. Be deeply skeptical of all claims. Number 2, assume all technology guilty until proven innocent. 3, walk away from the idea that technology is neutral or value-free, because every technology has inherent and identifiable social, political, and environmental consequences. Number 4, the fact that technology has a flash and appeal is meaningless. Negative attributes are very slow to emerge. 5, never judge a technology by the way it benefits you personally. The operative question is to ask, who does it benefit the most and to what end? Keep in mind that an individual technology is only one piece of a much larger web of technologies, a mega technology. The operative question is how the individual fits into the larger one. Make distinctions about technologies that primarily serve the individual or small community and those that operate on a scale of outside the community control, like nuclear energy. When it is argued that the benefits of the technological life are way worthwhile despite harmful outcomes, think of it as bribery. Because that's what it is. Do not accept the homily that once the genie is out of the bottle, you can't put it back. We most certainly can put it back. Or that rejecting technology is impossible. It's not. We can. Absolutely, we can. Mm-hmm. We can say, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. 5G has not improved my life. It's only made my life worse. So get the damn tower out. We're not going to do it. In thinking about technology within our present climate of technology worship, we must emphasize the negative to bring balance and stop being so damn positive about everything. Mm-hmm. Because that's the only way we can upend things. So let's move on to the dark side of computers.
Okay.
Without computers, the mega technological age would not have happened. Computers are basic to every technical innovation. Because of the universality of applications and implications, computers have been more celebrated than any technology since electricity. So let's look at the downside that we're never told about. Number 1, pollution and health. Computer manufacturing uses millions of gallons of acids and solvents that are disposed of at toxic waste dumps. In communities where computers are manufactured, serious health problems have arisen. In Silicon Valley, for example, high concentrations of a solvent that is carcinogenic have seeped into the drinking water. The EPA has identified 80 similar chemical spill sites associated with computer manufacturing, and this was about 20 years ago, so I'm sure it's far more than that now. Either that or they've just all moved to China where we don't care. According to an attorney of the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition, workers and the general population are being exposed to the most deadly chemicals that have ever been synthesized for computer production. A chief director at University of California, San Francisco said that the computer industry has an incidence of occupational illness more than 3 times that of the average manufacturing industry. So in light of this, many companies responded by moving manufacturing to Korea, Southeast Asia, and other countries. Mexico, probably Argentina, probably Chile, where the workers get paid less thanks to the juntas and are less informed. This doesn't even talk about the blue light of the monitors or the EMF fields that computers emit. That's just the basic. Employment. How could employment be a downside? Well, at the New York World's Fair in 1940, American industry promised that computers and automation would eliminate working and free us to pursue higher goals. In the 1980s, the same industry said that computers would open new careers and new kinds of industry and would ease the burden of office workers. These were just advertising pitches. The reality is the benefits of computers and machines are allotted to the people who own the equipment. Computers allow them to get the same job done with fewer pesky humans demanding increased wages, job safety, and health insurance and vacation time. As far as easing the burden on office workers, working with computers is the coal mining of the 1990s and on. So quantification and conceptual change. This brings us to the computerized forest and the computerized ocean and the computerized mountains, right? We're going to stick with the forest as the example. The U.S. Forest Service do most of their jobs via computers. The entire forest system has been divided into management units, as has the ocean, as has the sky, as has, right? Containing habitat capacity models and maximum sustainable yield computations, all of which reduce the needs of species and the workers' understanding of them to qualified formula. So everything is done by formula. Computers were introduced into forest management for the sake of efficiency, the implication being that it would help preserve nature. And all over we see on our computer screens, AI is helping save the Amazonian rainforest. Bullshit. That's the Ren Water Woman. The reality is the objective was to more efficiently account for the forest resources, trees, animals, water, minerals, and to better develop them as part of commodity society. So now take, for example, the Flathead Forest in Montana has a planned output of 200 grizzly bears and an X amount of deer, elk, and other animals. And this is where the hunting licenses and tags come from. They don't even go out there and look to see what's actually out there. They just have it all computerized into blocks. And so, right? So we have computerized the ocean. It's the same story. This is how they can say, well, the ocean's going to be fished out by, because it's all non-life based. It's all computer based. In schools, computers are replacing teachers and teaching functions. This changes the content of the information learned in school from the more subtle information that goes with traditional teacher-student relationship to the more hard-edged, data-based objective content that goes with the machine-user relationship. Ironically, one of the highly praised aspects of computers in schools has been its personal quality, because the computer gives the assignment, the student responds, and when all goes well, the computer gives user-friendly praise and encouragement. Computers are infinitely patient, they tell us, never tiring of working with slow learners. The questions we should ask are, what sort of person does this educational process produce? And what sort of knowledge do they get? And if children are separated from their parents by hours of TV and from their playmates by video games and from their teachers by computers, where are they supposed to learn to be human? Do computers make kids smarter? And the reality is studies show that these kind of children displayed production without comprehension. In other words, they could understand, but have no concept of what, they could go through the motions, but don't really truly understand. Number 4, surveillance. Computers have enabled the major institutions of our society, corporations, government agencies, the police, the military, the banks, to keep records well beyond what was previously possible, and to homogenize them all so that the park ranger can arrest you if you have an outstanding warrant.
Mm-hmm.
5, the rate of acceleration. As computers have accelerated and geographically broadened the information cycle within large institutions, human beings have had to move quickly to keep up. In our society, speed is celebrated as if it were a virtue itself, and yet the acceleration of the information cycle has only inundated us with an unprecedented amount of data, most of which is unusable in any practical sense. The true result has been an increase in human anxiety as we try to keep up with the stream of information. For millennia, human hand-eye coordination was attuned to an environment operating at natural speed. Everything that human beings had to deal with moved at speeds appropriate to our abilities. However, with the Industrial Revolution, many things began moving at mechanical speeds as the natural environment became paved over and humans moved into human-made environments. The natural rhythms of our reactions have given way to industrial rhythms. And now that the machines move at electronic speeds, the wheel of activity turns even faster with us on it. So we co-evolve with the environment we have created. We co-evolve with our machines, with ourselves, and it's a kind of inbreeding that confirms that nature is irrelevant to us. TV and computers makes us both dumb and speedy. Centralization. Computers have the look of a small-scale democratic technology, yet we've never asked who benefits the most from the existence of computers in a society. The computer invasion was not engineered by a group of high-minded do-gooders determined to further democracy. It was engineered by the American and British military, who first put them to use as guidance system for their missiles. Computers are all about war, bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
So it is profoundly naive for us working to prevent planetary destruction to speak of the computer as if it's neutral, as if it's useful as useful for decentralization as it has been for the centralized system we're part of. No, it's not. And worst case scenario, automatic computer warfare. And we know it's possible because of all the games out there that people play is all about warfare.
Mm-hmm.
So the invention of the computer instantly changed the speed at which war could be waged, the scale of its impact, and the quantity of its destruction. Hey, got a dog scratching at the window. So they go dark, and he won't stop. He's getting insistent. Diesel! So computers have changed the speed at which war could be waged, the scale of its impact, and the quantity of its destruction. In an 18-month trial period, the U.S. Special Strategic Forces experienced 151 fake alarms. 5 of them were significant enough to put the military on alert status. In 4 out of these 5, the military got put on alert to go to war over the flight of birds. And in the 5th, it was the full moon that alerted the military to go to war. Because the computer has no capability of, it's all done and blocked. So it has no capability of ascertaining a moonrise as opposed to a bogey, so to speak.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? So in all but the simplest computer system, hidden design flaws persist, sometimes for years, even though the system seems to work perfectly. And there exists no known methods for eliminating this uncertainty in complex computer programs. Computer error can only be mitigated by human intervention. The computer professionals for social responsibility have addressed the loss of common sense reasoning with the tsunami of computer technology with these words. What distinguishes common sense reasoning is the ability to draw on an enormous background of experience in the most unpredictable ways. The rules on which all computer systems are based treat the world as if it were built from a stock of predefined building blocks. This is why it puts the military on alert or because Grandmother Moon rose in her fullness, or the birds flew past, or the geese headed south, right past Cheyenne Mountain. Put together and carefully, so it's a stock of predefined building blocks put together in carefully prescribed ways. Artificial intelligence systems are particularly good at dealing with very complex configurations of these building blocks, but they're ill-equipped to respond appropriately to new kinds of blocks. In more complex environments, unanticipated events are liable to trigger anomalous reactions. That is why radar reflections of the rising full moon fooled the NORAD system. Moons are not among the building blocks in terms of what had been programmed into the computer. So it's the job of the programmer to anticipate ahead of time the range of problems that a computer system will encounter. The behavior of the system depends entirely on the structure of the programs, on the rules and the ways in which they're put together. Our society upholds a fierce technological idealism. We believe we can get the best from a given technology without falling into worst-case scenarios of the sort I just described. We maintain this idealism despite the fact that we have no evidence of technology ever being used at an optimal level or even being sensibly controlled. Most technologies are actually deployed in the manner that is most useful and profitable to the institutions that gain the most from their use, and this has nothing to do with public or planetary good. We're also strongly influenced by the paradigm that technological evolution is a good thing and that no bounds should be put on it. Just like as we get into the shock therapy, we're going to realize that no bounds should be put on the free market. That's what happened in Chile and Argentina and Bolivia, right? Our other societies have the concept of taboos to deal with destructive tendencies, but in our society, the idea of a taboo is itself taboo. The U.S. military continues to be the largest single financial source for computer science research in the world, and we could argue that the consumerization of the computer is merely a glamorization to help create public sympathy for its use as a panacea. That's how it's pronounced, when military use of computers is really the point. Now let's go back to television, to the dark side again. For most human beings in the Western world, watching TV has become the principal source of interaction with the world, as well as a primary activity of everyday life. At the same time, the institutions at the fulcrum of the process use television to train human beings in what to think, what to feel, and how to be in the modern world. Some statistics are that 99.5% of the homes in the U.S. that have electricity have television sets. So electronically, we are all wired together as a single entity. An electronic signal from a single source can reach nearly every person in the country at exactly the same time. Oh, it's Santa Claus.
That's it.
Yeah. This autocratic potential, the power of speaking into the brains of the many, is unprecedented. The consequences of this are keenly appreciated by those institutions large enough to attempt to control the medium, the corporations, religions, and government. 95% of the U.S. population watches TV every day. Not a day goes by without a hit of TV, which indicates the level of addiction. The average American home has a television on for nearly 8 hours a day. Ours is the first society in history of which it can be said that life has moved inside of media. The average person watching TV for 5 hours per day is physically engaged with it, looking at and experiencing a machine and a machine only. To that extent, the person is not relating to anything else in their environment, and the environment of TV is not static, it is aggressive, and it is an external environment that becomes an internal environment. Once again, we think of television as a democratic medium, yet 75% or more of the commercial network television time is paid for by the 100 largest corporations. You may think the statistic is not important, yet consider this. If there's 1 million corporations in the US and some 300 million people with 300 million diverse viewpoints, only 100 corporations get to decide what will appear on television and what will not. Is that freedom?
Mm-hmm.
Television is a private system in the hands of the largest corporations, or that television is a private system in the hands of the largest corporations is difficult for most of us to grasp. These 100 largest corporations also manufacture drugs, chemicals, cosmetics, packaged processed foods, cars, oil, and gas are involved in other extractive industries. The message you receive by TV is the same from all of them. Your satisfaction in life comes from buying their commodities. And you must ask your doctor about Viagra or Cialis or this drug or that drug. Scientists have found that the longer you watch TV, the more likely it is that your brain will shift into alpha waves, the waves in which your mind is the most receptive, and information can now be placed in your mind directly without your participation. One reason the brain slips into alpha waves is the lack of eye movement when watching TV. Your eyes can gather most of the image without scanning the screen for it. The image comes in whole, and the lack of seeing images disrupts the normal association between eye movement and thought stimulation, which is a genetically programmed safety valve for human beings. Another factor for slipping into alpha waves is that with your eyes not moving and the screen flickering on and off 60 times per second, an effective hypnosis is induced. So television viewing is actually sleep teaching, and if television is a drug, it's speed. While watching TV, we were moved into a perceptual universe that is much faster than ordinary life. The steady stream of imagery fractures your attention while condensing time and mixing categories of reality, non-reality, and semi-reality. The natural world is really slow. To experience nature, to feel her subtleties, requires human perceptual capability that is capable of slowness. It requires that human beings approach the experience with patience and calm. Life in modernity does not encourage that. It encourages just the opposite. We have all been sped up, and the natural world has retreated beyond our awareness for city dwellers. And some people even say that nature is boring, and that's because they're not slow enough to deal with it, to be with it, not deal with it, to be with nature. Caring about what happens to nature is not part of our emotional world, which helps pave the way for exploitation of it and people. Simultaneously, it makes us think that our future is on some other planet out there in space. Television synchronizes our internal processes with a world of concrete, computers, space travel, and acceleration. It puts our brains into passive alpha state, zapping our thinking processes and creative impulses. Simultaneously, it speeds up our nervous systems, making us too fast to feel calm, too fast to read, almost too fast to relate meaningfully with other human beings, and too fast for nature. And oh my God, that is the exact problem of the man I'm friends with, Jaime. Absolutely. He's too fast. He can't sit still.
That's everyone's problem.
He can't read. He can't.
Mm-hmm. Young kids, imagine that.
Yeah. From this alienation training emerges a speed junkie, a video void, a techno void. Most of us watch TV follow the lives of TV people with greater care and interest than we follow the lives of our own family members and friends. If there is a basic principle of environmentalism, it is that diversity is good, a bottom line necessity for natural systems to survive. The idea that communications technology, particular television, can have a role in destroying diversity within the human realm is not noted at all. By its ability to implant identical images into the minds of millions of people, TV can homogenize perspectives, knowledge, tastes, and desires to make them resemble the tastes and interest of the people who transmit the imagery. The drive to leave the planet and travel in space is not new. It is only in the final stage of a departure process that actually began a long time ago. Our society really left home when we placed boundaries between ourselves and Earth Mother, when we moved en masse inside totally artificial, reconstructed, mediated worlds, huge concrete cities and suburbs, and we aggressively ripped up and redesigned the natural world. So in truth, we are all homeless, longing to return. The quest for space travel is actually a distorted expression of a desire to return home to Eden, the place we abandoned. Like all creation stories, the story of the Garden of Eden is not something that never happened or only happened once a very long time ago. It's something that is happening in every moment. It was the murder of Abel who represented a state of oneness with the earth that set Cain off wandering on a never satisfied quest for the return to or recreation of paradise. So within the confines of our totally artificial environments on Earth, we also seek to re-enter Eden. In particular, the creation of the Disney worlds, megamalls, Airstream, mobile home cities, lifestyle segregated condominiums, communities are all updated forms of Cain's desire to return home by remaking the original creation. The tragedy is that in attempting to recover paradise, we accelerate the murder of nature. It's just yet another repeat of the story of Cain and Abel from the Bible. In the mega malls and Disney World, SeaWorld, Epcot Center, etc., we are pre-programmed participants in someone else's pre-engineered fantasies. The word Epcot is actually an acronym for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
One exhibit puts their goals very clearly: to help people who are unsure about or feel intimidated by the futuristic environments and complex systems. The whole place is a visionary, futuristic projection of a utopian, computerized, technologicalized police state where human behavior is as predefined as perfect grass lawns. Another thing we line up to see every day and pay big bucks to get into and never said yes to.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's where we'll end with technology.
Okay. So that's the god of machines that Mayan elder once told me everybody's a worshiper of that god.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's the new version of the ancient god of the Mayas called Akyahto, which was kind of the god of negative karma or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is a different entity than Hachakyum, the true creator, the real creator.
Right. Yeah. It would have to be.
So is there anything else for today?
Well, I'm looking for. Yeah, we can start with the corporation as a machine, but
The corporation of the machine.
Corporations as machines.
Okay.
Which is, we learned from the 14th Amendment talk that they've been humanized, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're not as subject to human control as most of us believe they are. Rather, it is an autonomous technical structure that behaves by a system of logic uniquely well suited to its primary function, which is to give birth and impetus to profitable new technological forms and to spread technologic around the world. Given the extent to which corporations affect both technical change and the forces of nature, it is surprising how little attention we give them and how much we want to work for them and climb their ladder.
Right.
Most of us accept their existence unquestioningly like background noise. We don't focus on them as the primary players they are, and we have very little understanding of why they behave as they do. We become aware of corporate behavior only when flagrant transgressions are reported in the news, like when we hear the news of dumping of toxic waste or the releasing of pollutants and on and on and on, right? So then our tendency is to respond as if the behavior stemmed from the people within the corporate structure, or we attribute it to the moral decline of the times we live in or to the failure of the regulatory process. Seeing corporate behavior as rooted in the people who work within them is like believing that the problems of television are attributable solely to its program content. With corporations, as with television, the basic problems are structural. And Buckminster Fuller said, don't fight the structure of the old, build a new one that makes the old one obsolete. They are problems in the forms and rules by which these entities operate. If the problems could be traced to the personnel involved, they would be solved by changing the personnel. Unfortunately, all employees, including the CEO, are obliged to act in consort, to behave in accordance with corporate form and corporate law. Form means content, and corporations are machines, robots, dead entities on paper. The failure to grasp the nature and inevitabilities of the corporate structure has left our society far too unconscious and passive to corporate desires and has helped corporations increase their influence, power, and freedom from accountability. And when we get into the shock and awe system of disaster, blanking the world and remaking it, 3 decades of it, we're going to see this. Ford on Ford, right? It's in Argentina and other countries. It's corporations already influence our conceptions of how life should be lived more than any other institution. Corporate ideology, corporate priorities, corporate styles of behavior, corporate value systems, and corporate modes of organization have become synonymous with our way of life. Corporate culture has become the virtual definition of American life, to be defended at all costs, even militarily. When the Secretary of State in 1985 said that in Nicaragua and El Salvador, we are fighting for our way of life. Whose life? The American corporate? Or the Nicaragua, El Salvador way of life? Yep, it was the threat of collectivism to free enterprise, otherwise known as privatization, that motivated his remark. Living in the United States today, there is scarcely a moment when not any one of us are not in contact with a corporation or its manifestation. It's very likely that you work for a corporation. If so, your daily schedule is determined by corporate needs. You dress and behave according to corporate concepts. You interact with machines by which corporations accomplish their tasks. You spend your day living within corporate rhythms. The building you live in was probably created by a corporation, as were your furniture, appliances, the clothes in your closet. All the results of concepts by a person that became corporate. Taken as a group, they're the largest landowners worldwide and are also the major financial backers of electoral campaigns and the major lobbyists for laws that benefit their corporate goals. Corporate advertising is the dominant education institution in our country, so surely in the realm of lifestyle and pills to take. No corporate manager could ever place community welfare above corporate interest. U.S. corporate law holds that management of publicly held companies must act primarily in the economic interests of their shareholders. So managers are legally obliged to ignore community welfare, their worker health satisfaction, and environmental concerns, if those needs interfere with their profit margin. And corporate managers must deny that corporate acts have negative impacts of any kind if that impact might translate into costly damage suits that hinder profit. Often corporations, the CEOs, are privately aware of the dangers of their products or processes, and they deliberately withhold that information. Withholding this information means that perhaps tens or thousands of people become sick, or animals or trees or waterways, and some might even die. In other contexts, murder charges would be in order. That murder charges are not levied against corporations and that they don't express shame at their actions is a direct result of the nature of a corporation. So human beings work for corporations. A corporation is not a person, even though the 14th Amendment says it is. And it does not have feelings. It exists only on paper. In most instances, a corporation is not even a thing. It may have offices or its own building and or a factory or products, but a corporation does not have any physical existence or form. It's got no corporality. It's got no corpus. This is a corpus, right? It's got no corpus.
Right. So bodiless entity.
Yeah. So when conditions in a community or a country become unfavorable, or safety standards become too rigid, or workers are not submissive enough, a corporation can dematerialize and then rematerialize in another town or country. So if a corporation is not a person or a thing, what is it? Right, it's a concept that's given a name and a legal existence on paper. Though there is no such actual creature, our laws recognize the corporations as an entity thanks to the 14th Amendment. And so we also think of corporations as entities. We think of them as having concrete form, but their true existence is only on paper and in our minds. But thanks to the 14th Amendment, this ephemeral non-entity has rights the same as ours. The law calls corporations fictitious persons with the right to buy and sell property or to sue in court for libel and slander, and corporate speech is also protected under First Amendment rights. But though corporations enjoy human rights, they have not been required to abide by human responsibilities. Even in cases of negligence causing death or injury, the state cannot jail or execute the corporation as it exists only on paper and in our minds. Corporations have been prosecuted and fined and been ordered to alter practices, but its structure is never altered. Its life is never threatened. In fact, unlike us human beings, corporations do not die a natural death. A corporation outlives the human beings who have been part of it, even those who own it. Such as Ford Motor Corporation. Henry Ford has been dead for how many years? Right? A corporation then seems to have the possibility of immortality. Of course, the owners can put it to death under certain conditions, or we as society can put it to death by refusing to tolerate a corporation and buy its product. If we all said no to their products, they would be out of business in 4 weeks. That's all it would take. The most basic rule of a corporate operation is that it must produce income and must show profit over time. Only nonprofit corporations don't have to show profit. The next rule is that it must expand and grow, since growth is the standard by which the stock market judges a company. All other values are secondary. So human beings within the corporate structure, whatever their personal feelings and morals are prevented from operating on their own standards. Like assembly line workers who must operate at the speed of the machine, corporate employees are strapped onto the apparatus of the corporation and have to abide by its rules. In 1986, Union Carbide Corporation's chemical plant in Bhopal, India, accidentally released a chemical called methyl isocyanate into the air, injuring some 200,000 people and killed more than 2,000. Soon after the accident, the chairman of the board, a Mr. Warren Anderson, was so upset at what happened, he informed the media that he would spend the rest of his life attempting to correct the problems his company had caused and to make amends. Yet 1 year later, Mr. Anderson was quoted in the same media as saying that he had overreacted and was now prepared to lead the company in its legal fight against paying damages and reparations. So first he acted as a normal human would, but since he didn't want to get fired, he had to dehumanize himself so the shareholders would be happy. In 1989, the Exxon Valdez crashed into a reef and spilled oil into the sea and onto the beaches of Alaska. The corporation blamed the captain for being drunk and promised to make amends. The cleanup turned out to be very expensive, so within 6 months, the efforts were stopped. The reality is that among the top corporate executives who live in a world of spreadsheets and financial manipulations, there is no awareness of how their actions affect people. So 11 rules of corporate behavior. Number 1, the profit imperative. The ultimate measure of all corporate decisions is profit. It takes precedence over community well-being, worker health, public health, peace, environmental preservation, and more. Number 2, the growth imperative. Corporations live or die by whether they can sustain growth. On this depends relationships to investors, to the stock market, to banks, and to public perception. The growth imperative also fuels the corporate desire to find and develop scarce resources in obscure parts of the world. Corporate planners consciously attempt to bring less developed societies into the modern world in order to create infrastructures for development, as well as new slave workers and new slave consumers. The corporate spokesperson says they do this for altruistic reasons, to raise the living standard. But remember, corporations are an entity, so they have no altruism. Competition and aggression. Corporations require a high degree of cooperation within management, while they place every person in management in fierce competition with others. The comparison with sports makes it clear. All members of a professional football team, which is itself a corporation, compete with each other, yet all players must cooperate to defeat an opposing team. Corporate or athletic ideology holds that competition improves worker incentive and corporate performance and therefore benefits society. We have swallowed this one hook, line, and sinker. Unfortunately, this rule surfaces in personal relationship. And so living by standards of competition and aggression on the job, we have few opportunities to express softer personal feelings. And this equals busted relationships or even domestic violence. Amorality. Corporations do not have feelings, morals, or altruistic goals. So decisions that may hurt living things are made without suffering or misgivings. Then they seek to hide their amorality and attempt to act altruistic. The effort to exhibit social responsibility by corporations comes precisely because they are not responsible to the public, only to their shareholders, so they have no interest in community goals except the ones that serve their purpose. It is pretty fair to assume that corporations will tend to advertise the very qualities they do not have in order to allay negative public perception. We must remember that all corporate acts are in service to profit only and nothing else. Hierarchy, caste. Corporate law requires that corporations be structured into classes of superiors and subordinates within a centralized pyramidal structure. This is the caste system, and it makes it natural that we have all been placed into a national pecking order. Some jobs are better than others, some lifestyles are better than others, some neighborhoods, some skin colors, some kinds of knowledge, some men over women, Westerners over non-humans, over nature, and so it goes on. That effective non-hierarchical modes of organization exist on this planet and have been successful for millennia is barely known. Number 6, quantification, linearity, segmentation. Corporations require that subjective information be translated into objective form or numbers. This excludes from the decision-making process all values that do not translate into numbers. So forests are evaluated as board feet, not trees, they're board feet. Production production elements that pose danger to public health or welfare are translated to value-free objective concepts. Auto manufacturers evaluating the safety level of certain production standards calculate the number of probable accidents and deaths at each level of the standard. This then is compared with the cost of insurance payments and lawsuits, and the number is assigned to the public relations problem, and the balance is sought. So when corporations are asked to clean up their problems, they lobby to relax the new standard to contain costs, or they move to non-developed countries. The result is that they are okay with a predictable number of people becoming sick and dying. And as you and I support them, so then we are too. Really? Are we really okay with a predictable number of people becoming sick and dying because of corporate behavior? Nothing else. Dehumanization. As the environment and the community are objectified by corporations, so is the employee objectified and dehumanized. Corporations make a conscious effort to depersonalize, and in the great majority of corporations, employees are viewed as ciphers, as cogs in the wheel, replaceable by others or by machines. So we'll end with that tonight.
Well, the bodiless corporations, and it's all the same thing. It's this technology world, this technological God we worship so greatly.
Yeah, it is. It's all the same.
Inseparable from these corporations. So it's great that you've covered that, and we're going to continue covering this, I guess, with a fourth session of.
Oh yeah. Well, what we'll do is next week we'll finish this, because I'm almost done with it, but it would take us over tonight. So we'll do this, and we're going to go into the downside of the dark side of Christianity. And then after next week, we're going to go into the barbarous world of casteism, the god-awful world of casteism.
Okay.
And then after casteism, we're going to go into the 3 decades of erasing and remaking the world, big corporatism. And we're really going to see how the machines function.
Okay. So things we need to hear. And if you want to say something else before
saying that, take for instance, and you might say, anyone listening to this would say, well, it doesn't matter to me. That was in the 1970s. What should matter to you? In the 1970s, when in Argentina, Ford Argentina participated in torturing. They had a concentration camp. They had an Auschwitz on their campus, in which they put their workers who wanted decent wages and decent treatment, and they tortured them. Ford Argentina did this. They participated. We need to let this sink in. It matters. It absolutely matters. That it doesn't matter that it's 30, 40, 50 years ago. It matters that they did it. They got away with it. And we're going to understand how they got away with it. They were responsible for murdering and torturing hundreds and thousands of people. They donated their cars to the junta. People knew it was a specific green Ford Falcon that was coming around to collect them.
Yeah.
So I will never drive a Ford again. Never. And I'm on a mission to get rid of the one sitting in my driveway.
Okay.
Mercedes Benz Fiat too was in. There we go.
Your video went out. Okay, you're back.
So next week we're going to finish with the corporate machine and go into the dark side of Christianity.
Okay. So there's the invitation. There's next week's session, and we'll wait for you at the same time, same place. Please let us know you're live by sharing this and by letting us know something somebody's watching this, and we see people watching, but we don't get a lot of likes, so that's not good. So please at least give it a like or something. And
Well, and you know, the thing with all this is, especially when we get into Christianity, the dark side of Christianity next week, and then go into casteism, it's going to be really important to see the patterns that keep repeating over
mhm,
and over and over again. This is why we have got to delve into this. This is why we've got to go into this darkness, so we can say no more. We don't want any more of this system.
right.
We're done with it.
Hmm. Okay. Well, and we'll be done with today's session, but we'll continue into this long journey,
Yeah.
coming back to Holy Mother and to the sacred.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.